All right, Lonesome Report. I'm Jim Mundorf from Southwest Iowa, and Shad Sullivan is from
The headwaters of Bitter
oh,
Creek, Archer County, North Texas.
the one time you give me a chance, I could have shot it in there, and I was waiting for you. Um, all right, and you can listen to this on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, and also watch us on YouTube. And this is kind of it's brought to you by the Lonesome Lands website, which is what I run, and you can go there, and if you want to support what we're doing here, you click on subscribe, and you can buy merch and do some things there to help keep this thing going. And what it this is just me and Shad get together once a week and talk about what's going on in the world, kind of in the world and in the world of agriculture and how what's going on in the world affects the world of agriculture, kind of. And so here we are, and here we go. Um, this week I feel like everything's kind of the news is all focused on these appointments now. I'm hoping to get stop talking about politics all the time, but that's kind of everyone's just sitting around waiting to see what this whole thing is going to look like, this new administration, and that's kind of where we are, I feel like. Um, and if you didn't catch the last two, we did two last week because of the Secretary of
Yeah.
Agriculture rumors. And so I guess we can get right back into there as far as what's happened since then is as far as Secretary of Agriculture is not much, I think. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean that came out and it was such big news and everybody was excited and discombobulated and it was just wild and crazy. And then we weren't sure if it was real. It was real though, Jim. And I think that was an accidental um, let out of that news, and so they had to kind of scale it back a little bit. But I do believe that was true,
So you
and
think,
I believe
and so to go back, if you didn't catch last week's, Joel Salatin said he's an advisor to the next Secretary of Agriculture, which will be Thomas Massie. He put that out in a blog post. No one had said anything about it. Thomas Massie has said, came out and said that he's not. He would love to be considered, or he put out a statement saying that he is not the next Secretary of Agriculture. Nothing has been
basically that he
offered.
admit, yeah, that he
It
had
had
no
not been
offers or
offered.
right.
Um, And then Joel, like I put on Twitter the other day, Joel Salatin has come out with two different blog posts since then and doesn't say a single thing about it. Which is crazy because, he was kind of the headline news in agriculture I mean, has been for the last week, and he still just doesn't say anything about it, which to me, it does seem like if that was completely made up, he would come out and try to save some face and be like, whoops, instead of just ignoring it and almost seemingly waiting for the news to actually drop. But
Yeah.
you think it will be Thomas Massie?
Well, I think it was an accidental leak. I don't think that he really meant to do that. And yes, I do think it was for sure Thomas Massey to pick. I think that in my research and my findings, which aren't always right, but I think that Trump made a deal with RFK, and that deal was, and I'm basically kind of grabbing at stars here, but that deal was to let RFK oversee the FDA and the USDA, which I mean they kind of need to be together anyway. But and I think that RFK has Massey for the job, but I don't know where that accidental leak from Salatin, I don't know where that puts Massey now. I think
Yeah,
that
like if it
the
if it
rumors were, yeah, yeah, the
if it
rumors were
screwed him.
consistent that it was going to be Massey. That was consistently coming from other people that kind of have a no into the game. But now whether they'll follow through on that now, I don't know. I hope they do. I think Massey's the guy to help us fight globalism. and kind of implement the what RFK and the Mayha, I guess that's how they say it, um, ideology is. I don't even want to call it an ideology, but their goal, right? And so I think that he's our guy, but it's just people are just positioning themselves like crazy, and so there's all this rumor and all these things like a couple days ago, it's GT Thompson was going to be that. Well, that would be a disaster for the American people, especially producers. Then and now that this Sarah Frey lady who has come from nothing, I had not heard of her, but she has put this her family. She has saved the family farm, and they now farm 15,000 acres in Florida, Georgia, Missouri, Arkansas, Indiana, and West Virginia, mostly fruit crops like watermelon, pumpkins, all that stuff. Now people are talking about her. And
And that's
and then last week me and you were talking about. Go ahead.
you're breaking up a little bit. That's a Politico story that came out with a
Go
Sarah
ahead.
Frey.
Yeah, Sarah Frey and Charles Herbster.
And Charles
Right.
Herbster, it
That
seems
was
like
from
just
Politico.
for those, he's a cattle guy out of Nebraska. And he ran for governor.
Yeah.
And he almost his tweet there, he's
He
like,
is.
yeah, he says so thankful for the nomination. I mean, people don't get nominated for these deals; you just get it selected. And
No,
so it's almost like he's just trying to throw his hat in the ring. Um, and what's interesting is following this,
I think that's exactly.
and I've never followed it like as closely as this because of, now we're on Twitter all the time and you can just follow it closely. You can follow it closely now. And like they were saying before, Trump was like into his presidency when before he made all of his selections, I think, and most of them came in like December or late December. And now he's just kind of cranking them out. So which kind of has everybody kind of on the edge of the seat about these things. What were you saying about Herbster?
Well, Herbster is a huge donor to the GOP and to Trump. I mean, huge donor. And so I think that, with that tweet of his yesterday and then this story, I think he's just trying to position himself for the job. But it says here that both Sarah Frey and Charles Herbster are large GOP donors and outsiders to the federal government. And so I think that, everybody, I'm hoping that Trump isn't into the pay to play system, because and I don't think he is right now. I think he's trying to do what's best for the country, because all those people buying their way in and jockeying for position, it's just crazy out there. And
Yeah.
so I've taken a step back, Jim, and just said, all right, let's let the chips fall where they may, and we'll cover it when it comes. Because as I said last week, I truly believe that agriculture is the basis of this election. And if you'll notice, we don't have a Secretary of Interior yet. We don't have a Secretary of Agriculture yet. And so I think those are two very, very, very important positions that a lot of people are jockeying for, that maybe we're going to have to wait on. He wants to get to work. He said he wants to get to work on day one. And so I think that his moves are very methodical, and he deems them very important, and he's not just going to go with whoever.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting as you're able to follow it. It's like this Kip Tom who it's like where does that name come from? And then it says, well, it's like the Herbster thing. He was apparently he had you ever heard of that Farmers and Ranchers Coalition for Trump?
Not before this week.
Yeah. There's a bunch of signs actually around here, Farmers for Trump. And I wondered where those came from, but maybe there's just something we haven't been paying attention to.
Yeah, I
But
don't
yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
what it seems like. It's like, well, let's get this coalition. We'll give them a bunch of money, and then maybe we can get in there and impose our will. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the Zippy Duval Farm Bureau, Farm Bureau name that came up, but also it's what's kind of crazy to see. Like Do these people really agree with Trump, or are they just wanting to be able to get in there in a position of power in case he
It's a
wins?
position. Yeah,
Because
it's
they
a
know they're
position.
not getting anywhere with the Harris administration, so it's like, well, maybe I'll be able to get a position of power and you know, grease the
Yes.
wheels.
No, yeah, it's a position of power and influence, and a lot of these corporate ag people that are tied to corporate agriculture are in a full-out panic. I
Yeah.
mean, they did want Trump, but at the same time, they want to have the total access to him and influence. And so, I guess was it Oregon? Who did I talk to yesterday that they had their uh, cattlemen's convention? Um, it was in the Northwest. I can't remember what state it was. And Ethan Lane was, and it was just this week. And Ethan Lane was the keynote speaker. And somebody in the audience asked him what he thought of Thomas Massie becoming the next Secretary of Agriculture, and he literally laughed him off the stage and didn't say anything.
Yeah,
And so
well,
that's the kind of
if
power
you
we're
know the
trying to
history,
avoid.
and I've kind of kept quiet about it because I don't want to start a big campaign against Thomas Massie, but Thomas Ma yeah, the NCBA I like I said, I don't want to say too much, but if you followed Thomas Massie, that would kind of be the end of NCBA. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of them, but yeah, they do not have a close relationship. I will put it like that. And I'm
Yeah.
so where I'm sitting is my fingers are crossed that it is him. And when he gets selected, I'll put
Yes.
everything out there that kind of, and I mean the NCBA people are aware of it. I just don't want to start, they have their, you know, bootlickers kind of that follow them around, and I don't want to get them too wound up with all the information that's out there about Thomas Massie and the NCBA. Um, but yeah, to I guess that's where we're at. Just this money that
Well,
comes in.
the point is everybody is yeah. The point is everybody is jockeying for a position. There's a lot of lobbying going on. There's a lot of speculation and power grabbing and hopeful power grabbing, and it's very confusing. And man, when it gets like that, I just kind of take a step back and say, okay, let's watch this for a little bit and see how it falls.
Yeah, and hope that because like you talk about the money and like this Kip Tom, who's a big farmer in is it Indiana or somewhere, but you got to
Yeah,
think he has connection. If he put this coalition together, who's to say Cargill or Monsanto or these kind of companies? He's a big grain farmer, so they're like, well, let's put money behind this deal, and then hopefully we get him in there for Secretary of Agriculture. You could see how that would work. Um,
yeah,
and the same with maybe Herbster or there's big corporate cattle outfits in Nebraska who, maybe they put money in trying to get him in there. It's interesting, but I guess the picks so far, they don't seem like big money picks, but the one in that has kind of shook up rural America a little bit is the one that was officially announced this morning, I think, was Kristi Noem out of South Dakota. The governor of South
yeah.
Dakota is going to be is it Secretary of Homeland Security, I believe,
Yes,
um,
yeah.
which is disappointing, to say the least. And it's also like what, but also Homeland Security falls under. So I was looking up because Vivek is also in the news. Let me see if I can find this thing. Homeland Security. So I was looking up his plan for the USDA. I was looking up Vivek's plan because I guess we can get into that a little bit too. The Department of Government Efficiency. Vivek and Elon Musk will be heading that up.
Yeah.
If I could get my dang computer to work right. I must have lost everything. Anyway, USDA or Food and Nutrition Services, Homeland Security is under that. Did you know that? Food and Nutrition Services, USDA, Health Human Service, I believe, and Homeland Security are all under a
Health and Human
government
Services.
program or the government branch of Food and Nutrition Services. And so, and food security is like part of the Homeland Security, you know, what's underneath Homeland Security. So there is some kind of ties to agriculture. When you think about Homeland Security, it's, and like what Trump put out there, it was all about the border and that kind of stuff, which apparently she sent the National Guard to the border a couple times, and that's where I mean, that's why he said he thought
That's
she was a good pick. But to me, it's like, I don't know, that's a head scratcher to me. What do you think?
I thought it was a head scratcher too. I totally thought it was a head scratcher too because, you know, I and maybe she would have had a higher level had she not told the American people that she killed her dog. But
Which that's
I
the other
just
head scratcher. Like
I
she has
know
terrible PR. She's not smart. Like that was the dumbest thing.
I don't know why
And
she
now, so
did that.
now we have a really dumb person. I mean, she's dumb from the get-go. Her first thing was meth, we're on it. And do you remember that ad campaign? It's an
No,
ad. Yeah, that's South Dakota's like an anti-drug message was meth, we're on it. And it was so stupid. Yeah,
dang.
but it mean like the meaning of it, like her meaning of it, or the ad
Yeah.
campaign, and they paid for this big ad campaign. And there's pictures of the state of South Dakota, and it says meth, we're on it. But the whole thing is, it's so easy to confuse. But the thing is, like, we're on it. We're on the case of getting meth out of South Dakota. That's the point. But it's so dumb. Like you're saying you're on meth. And that was like one of her first things when she got in office. But then also everybody's thinks it's great because of what she did during COVID, but how has it been explained to me by the South Dakotans is that she was ready to shut the state down. And South Dakota is one of the only states that stayed really pretty much open. We went on vacation there during, I think it was 2020, because it was one of the places you could go and visit and see all the sights and Mount Rushmore and Black Hills and all that, and not be under any sort of restrictions. And but her plan was to shut it down, but it was the state like legislator that forced her to keep it open. And then once it stayed open, she took all the credit, and South Dakota's this freedom loving place. It just goes to show, and somebody put on Twitter too, it's like she's a, I think they put a duck decoy or something like that, which it is. It's like she puts on the cowboy hat, she rides her horse around the rodeo arena carrying the flag and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to really protecting farmers and ranchers' freedoms, which she had multiple chances to do, every more chances than
Oh
anyone
man.
against this
Yeah.
carbon pipeline, and she was against it. She was against the freedoms of the counties, really, if you want to get specific, but the property rights of farmers and ranchers. She was against them. And so seeing her in any sort of position of power, it just kind of sucks. And I don't know.
Well, and here's the thing. She has made no friends of South Dakota people. I
Yeah,
mean,
they can't. Yeah.
whether you're in agriculture or not, I don't think she could get reelected up there. I think that she has become an enemy of their state just because she did not. She uplifted conflicts of interest above her duty to protect the people.
And that's
And
what's, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that's what's scary about this keeping money out of agriculture. We know Bruce Rastetter out of Iowa, who's pushing this carbon pipeline, is the reason she kept her mouth shut and did not stick up for her own citizens was because of all the money coming in from Summit Ag. They financed her inauguration dinner and all these different things, and she has close to ties to people in that organization. And now, maybe they, for some reason, had something to do with that. But
Well,
also it's
it's
weird. And I don't want to get into the gossip thing, but Trump's kind of campaign guy, Corey Lewandowski, which I didn't know about, and maybe we'll get into this later, and I'm not going to get into too much of how I found out about this, but um apparently, I mean, and it isn't like a gossip thing. This seems to be well known that he had a they had a relationship and they're both married and right? I mean, it was in the New York Post. There was a big article about it in the New York Post about how they're sleeping together, pretty
oh,
much. So,
nice.
right? You
Hey,
saw it. You were like the guy who told me about it.
no, I didn't tell you about that. I have heard that. I've heard
Well,
that.
it's like a big article in a major newspaper. I don't think
Yeah,
it's like any sort of secret
no,
or it's not
right.
like the
I've heard it.
National Enquirer or something like that.
No, I've heard it from all the South Dakota people too. But I mean, I think I don't give a crap about all that kind of stuff, but it does show her character. And I have heard that she has a family member that works for this Summit Ag.
Yeah,
And
I
I don't
think
know if
like
that's
or he
son-in-law
works.
or something.
I don't know if it's for Summit, but I think it was for the airplane fuel company that was going to get some
Right,
of this carbon or something. I don't know.
right.
I'm sure Amanda Radke could lay it all out for
Either
you.
well, she could, and but either way, it was all conflict of interest, and it all is a. I don't know. I'm not big. I just wonder how she's going to run this agency with no. I mean, she doesn't even have military
Yeah, I
uh,
know.
experience, and she's got really the only thing that ties her to agriculture under this agency is APHIS, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. That's it. The rest of it is all, immigration, naturalization, federal protective service, transportation security. I mean,
Yeah, and
there's
that's what they focused on. They said she's going to work with that Tom Homan guy who's at deporting people and all that. But another thing is if somebody posted a picture and said if you're disappointed in Trump's picks, just be glad it's not what it was, and it had two of the fellas dressed up like in
yeah.
their skirts,
No, I
that
agree.
were part of Biden's cabinet. So I
I
guess,
totally can get behind that 100%.
yeah. I mean, think
I
about
mean,
what we could be dealing with.
and you know what? If Kristi Noem wants a future in politics, she's got to make the people happy. I mean, she has to do her job for the people. Otherwise, she's going to play hell for a long time to come. So maybe she, with her book coming out, what she's done to the state, and then the state speaking in this last election on property rights, maybe she's learned and she'll be good. Let's hope so.
Well, Trump has no problem firing. What he showed last time, he has no problem firing people. So,
No problem at all.
if he gets her up to DC and find out she's kind of an idiot and she keeps doing these, I mean, dumb things like that book was just, I never read it, I guess, so I don't know. I shouldn't comment, but the whole thing just seems so
Well, I don't know
stupid.
why she thought putting that in her book would help her
That's the
gain
thing.
favor among the American people. I mean, it doesn't bother me. I mean, she probably had a reason to kill the dog. Maybe he attacked somebody.
Right.
I don't know. I didn't read the book, but I don't think we need to go. You need to go pushing that out to the public
Yeah, and how
to
it
make
just
money on
shows
her
how,
book.
yeah, it just shows how disconnected you are. Yeah, because, yeah, there are dogs that need to be shot, but people are gonna, especially she's got haters. I think about that when I put stuff out. Like, there's people who would love to see me fail and so I don't want to put anything
Yep,
out there that would make it real easy to attack. And heck, I'm just
yep.
some idiot, sitting, I'm not anybody, like I'm not a governor, you know. But anyway, what else do you have? You had some other interesting
Well,
things.
I was going to here's something that kind of worries me about the Kip Tom deal is he was the ambassador to the United Nations agencies for food and agriculture, and I didn't know who he was. He held that position. Well, he held the position of United States mission to the UN agencies in Rome from 2019 to 2021. Now, I don't know how a man is one of the largest farmers in Indiana, and is living in Rome or is meeting once a month in Rome
That
for
sounds
two
like a heck of
years.
a gig, don't it?
I know it does. And here's the deal. Kip Tom is supposed to be a freedom fighter, and he's thinking about wanting to be the Secretary of Agriculture. And no time in history has the United Nations been attacking American agriculture more than they are right now. This is a problem to me. He should have had this shut down. I mean, I have no use for this guy already because I have never heard of him even in the fight of liberty against the United Nations. And so that has me a little bit bothered right there on
Could you
him.
imagine though? What'd you say? Once a month you get a trip to Rome?
Yeah, I guess
I haven't
that's, I
been there,
mean,
but I
I
heard
don't
it's
know.
nice.
Well, it says here from 2000 to 2019 to 21, he was the chief of the United States mission to the UN agencies in Rome. Now, whether he lived there or not, I don't know. But you can't be running your Indiana, the largest Indiana farm, and running to Rome or living in Rome for 2 years or however it happened and be a part of American agriculture. I mean, it's just impossible to do that.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's my concern on him. I don't know. There's lots of people that I guess would probably be good. I'm kind of holding my support behind Massie, and I'm trying to push that out as much as I can because I mean Massie is a freedom fighter. I don't I'm not I don't know about him in the regenerative world. I don't know about him in the production world. I watched uh that little what would you call it? You sent it to
The
me.
documentary.
Yeah, that little documentary, and I thought it was really fantastic, and he's super smart, and he's just kind of, I feel like he's just kind of one of us.
Yeah.
Like his place, even though he built this big beautiful home with his own hands, it wasn't super fancy. He used common sense approaches to his food production. I loved all that. And then when he was on Fox News with me, and he defended me in saying that this, EID was a property rights issue, and he agreed with me. I was totally on board with him because few people have done that, and so I kind of like the guy. He's just kind of a common
Yeah.
American. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. I mean, and there's been two people that have really fought the EID thing. And to go back, you and I probably both know people who claim to be farmers and ranchers that probably spend most of their days sitting in an office. Like this Sarah Frey, she's running a farm in 5 different states.
Yeah,
What are the odds
exactly.
that she's sitting in an office all day? Or
Oh, you're
actually,
right.
it's like once these farms, like Kip Tom's or whoever's, get so big, they're in a management position more than they are an actual farmer, unless they really want to
Yeah,
be. I'm not saying he's not out there running combine or doing whatever he might be, but there's plenty of guys out there that are sitting in offices and it's like this corporate feedlot world where there's all these guys that are, say that they're cattle feeders and they're more than likely sitting in an office crunching numbers but to go back to Thomas Massey, he doesn't have to do any of this stuff. He's a farmer because he wants to be one. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like he's out
yeah,
there
no,
raising chickens because he's interested in it. He has his little cow herd because he's really interested in it. He doesn't need to do any of that. Um, but he wants to. And I don't think he even really needs to be in the Senate to learn about, the business he built and what he's done. He's just there because he loves the country and he loves agriculture, and it seems like that's the guy. But to go back, like him, there's been two people who fought hard against the ID tags, and it's been him and Harriet Hageman, and it
yep,
seems like we haven't heard her name at all. Have you talked to anybody or tried to
yeah,
push that?
yeah. I talked to her office yesterday morning at length. I talked to Trinity Lewis, and I just said, Trinity, um, my pick for Secretary of Agriculture is either Massie or Hageman. And really, I want Massie because I want Hageman to go to the Secretary of Interior. We need her in a high level position because she is, gosh, she's so dependable. She says what she means. She follows through on her word. She's a big deal now. And she just told me, Trinity just said, Shad, she's here to serve the people. And I said, okay, I get that. You're here to serve the people. You're following through on your word. And that's very admirable too. So I don't think that she's going to be considered for anything unless something changes. But yeah, I was hoping we could get her as the Secretary of Interior. Now I'm hoping I can go back to Margaret Byfield. Margaret Byfield would be a great Secretary of Interior as well. And nobody's talking about the Secretary of Interior. That is one of the most important, agriculturally speaking, one of the most important positions. And they put Deb Haaland in it just because she was a woman and a Native American. And I'm like, oh my gosh! And you never ever hear anything good about her ever.
Yeah.
So
She,
you know that's a big position, Jim, that needs to be talked about a little bit.
Yeah. So you know more about all these people than I do, but you're probably this. I don't talk on the phone much. It sounds like you've been nothing but on the phone, but I haven't talked. One guy told me that the Ammon Bundy is going to be involved in BLM. It's like, what do you think of that? I
I
mean,
don't
he
know.
would know it. He would know the problems better than anybody, and
He
how to
would,
fix them.
he
But
would,
I
and
mean, that
there's
would be something. How would that be for grabbing headlines?
boy, it would be for grabbing headlines, and they might. I don't know. The last I heard, they was Ammon Bundy had a price on his head, and I like the guy. I mean, I really think he stands for what is right. Um, Now, I got a friend of mine from Western Colorado, Sean Pond. He has reached out to me to write a letter of reference that he has been approached about being the director of the BLM, and I, he has not been in the fight very long, but he is super, super, super knowledgeable because they're trying to take a bunch of country in western Colorado and put in a what is it, a national park or something like that.
Wolf
And
Preserve?
well, I think it's a national park. The I gosh, it escapes my mind what it's called. Stop the whatever. And he's done a great job, and he's worked with Lauren Boebert heavily on that issue, and they're making great headway and tracks. He would be great. He lives over there by Grand Junction, Colorado, which is where the last Trump administration moved the Bureau of Land Management offices to. And so I suspect that they will do that again, and he would be really super good at it. So yeah, we got to get people that are on our side in those positions.
Yeah. What do you think about the Doge, Department of Government Efficiency?
Okay, now we don't have a Doge now, right?
Right. This is a whole new thing.
This would be a whole new thing, and Vivek and who else?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk are going to head that up. But what I'm reading is Elon Musk would have to divest in all of his holdings to do that, and I don't think that that's
I'm
possible.
sure there's probably a way around that, but
Well, I mean, he could sell it to his daughter or whatever. I mean, there are ways around it, but I think it's a great idea,
that's
Jim. I
stupid.
think I think it's a great idea.
I'm sure he has to divest in all his holdings, and Nancy Pelosi gets to keep all her stock that she moves around right before she
Yes.
makes laws about it.
Why are you even
That don't
asking me?
make any sense.
Are you kidding me? It makes all sense in the world. That's the way this world is run. I mean, there's a different standard for the left than there is the right.
Yeah. I mean, it does make, like, you should say, well, and who know, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we don't really know what the roles are going to be, but I've been looking at, because I did all that. Vivek spent so much time in Iowa. I've been going back, and all of his stuff is good. I feel like we could spend a whole episode on this deal though, because he does kind of promote lab grown meat. I mean, he has done that and recently. And so there's the one thing, but his main thing, like, I talked to him because he was here every other week, and it's easy. I could just drive 10 minutes down the road and find a place where he was campaigning when he was campaigning for president. And I asked him about it, and he said, I have no intention. I remember the one thing he says, I have no intention of mandating anyone's culinary choices, I believe is what he said, or something like that. But yeah, he's a Hindu, and because of that, he's a vegetarian and believes not killing
Well,
sentient beings is what he likes to say, which I believe is what they say.
he hasn't worked with them cattle long enough to. I mean, he needs to come out here and then he'd be okay with it. But
Well, he went to a place down the road here. I saw pictures of him and I recognized the place, and they're a limousine breeder. Um, we had bought bulls from him years ago, which is why I kind of recognized the place because I'd been down there. But and there was pictures of that on Facebook. But yeah, I mean, he was campaigning here, so he had to kind of toe that line. But I
are
mean,
you
besides
worried?
that,
Are
what's
you
that?
worried about him not towing that line, or keeping his
I
promise? I
think
mean,
there's a lot of people who saw him as this ultimate outsider. He had started a pharmaceutical company. You know, there was all this talk while he's campaigning that he was just coming in and, you know, kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing. You know, he's pretending to be this guy that he wasn't, and I don't believe that at all. I read his book, Woke Incorporated. The reason why I read his book is because all this ESG stuff coming in this kind of sustainable and woke type culture that's coming in and was in John Deere and Dairy Farmers America and NCBA and everywhere else. And he was the first to really call this out, and it was in that book, Woke Incorporated. Um, and so when you look at his stand, like he said, he's written, I think, two books on it. He's been very consistent down the line. The reason he quit his big corporate job is because they told him that he could not he had to endorse Black Lives Matter or something like that. And he was like, "Well, I'm not doing that," you know, and it was all part of this, you know, you have to make your investors happy who are in on this kind of woke ESG deal. And so he quit his, you know, he started that company and he quit it to kind of and he ended up getting into politics, and nobody's really fought harder against the in the I mean what we call it in agriculture is the sustainability push, which is all this climate stuff, than that guy, and which is great. And he's, I mean, your buddy Alex Newman put up a video of him talking about how he wants the US out of the United Nations. And I mean,
no, I
that's
like him.
to
I
have
I mean,
him have anybody with that attitude about the UN is a win, I think, no matter what their take is on eating meat.
I totally agree. If they have those values, and he has done a really good job. I like to listen to him talk. I like his aggression. I like his, he's very fluent and fluid in his talking, and I just love that. And if he has, well, you say, the book, um, I'm like, yeah, well, he's probably a freedom fighter, not a freedom or a freedom take maker, not a freedom taker. What are you looking at,
I'm
bro?
finding the book. I'll show you the book. Woking. It's where I really and a lot of the stuff. It's where I really and a lot of the stuff I've talked about comes from with ESG. It's how I learned about environmental social governance and this push in corporate America to come up with to push that into these corporations, which I guess takes me to another thing on our list. This climate crap has been pushed so hard into agriculture, and now we have a president who has called it what it is. He's called it a hoax. I mean, Vivek's every campaign stop he did that I saw, he talked about the climate agenda hoax, which is really um, you know, just focusing on the climate to push money certain places. And we've seen that more. That's clear as day in agriculture. And so what's going to happen, I guess, with all this money, like I've talked about for over a year now, $3 billion pushed into agriculture from USDA, and it's all going towards this climate crap. And now we have people in there. You talk about government efficiency. It's the least efficient thing there is. You have a president and a vice president who both went on Joe Rogan's biggest podcast ever and talked about how wind energy is a gigantic scam. And then you look out your window or you look around while you're driving down the road, and at nighttime you see them red flashing lights and they just fill the sky off of them
Like
windmills.
everywhere, all over.
Yeah. And so what is going to happen? I mean, the wonderful thing is they didn't our county. The other thing is with the internet, I feel like we've been able to get this information out there. In our county, the people came together and put a stop to it, and it didn't get to my backyard, but it's in a lot of people's backyard. And so really, like, I think there's got to be a question of what is going to happen. There's companies who, you know, not just windmill type of companies, but even ag companies who their entire profitability depends on this climate agenda. Um, and it will
Well,
be,
that leads us into a really good segue there. The COP29 is going on now. It's the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Azerbaijan, and they just came out this morning um, with a report saying that um, they have declared a war on farmers and that producers of meat and dairy should and will pay for the damage they have caused to the climate. And they are calling for this meat tax, right? And so we go back to Dr. Marco Springman from Oxford University saying, doing his study on American red meat eaters. And he did a red meat tax study on us in 2019. And he's a vegan activist. So this war on beef and war on farmers is just escalating away from America now, because I think what you just said, with Trump coming out and saying this is all baloney. I think that they're going to come harder at us. The director of the United Nations is tweeting every 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm tweeting back at him all of his lies and bullshit. But this is something that we're going to have to really, you know, Trump's win was a loss for communism. That's the way I'm seeing it. And so they're going to come harder now. And it's going to be, we've had all these storms, and they're going to use that as leverage. But it says here, producers of meat and dairy should pay taxes for the damage they cause, according to Jerome Rimmers, who is the director of True Animal Protein Price Coalition, based in Amsterdam. So here we go back to the European Union. I really enjoyed Sean Baker this morning on X, coming out and saying, how do you destroy a nation? You destroy a nation by taking their protein from them. And that's exactly what they did, back in the 17th century, when they thought that France was going to invade England. And that guy wrote that war ballad. So I don't know. This is going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out, and how our relationships with these ENGOs and these NGOs, how they affect our food supply and food security, Jim.
yeah, and that just goes back to, you know, we can complain about certain things going on, but thank God we don't have, the one person presidential candidate who said, we need to get rid of,
Eliminate.
yeah, it's
Yep. Eliminate beef.
because of climate change. Like she was
Yeah.
all in on that deal.
But the
Um,
problem is, though, Jim, and I see this as a huge problem, and that's why I'm speaking up against it, is because these trade organizations have bought into the lie, just like you
yeah,
said. And
and
so,
that,
how is their relationship with this administration going to pan out? Because we know down deep, these trade organizations, leaders, and especially their members, don't believe in this bullcrap. We know that they have just bought on to it to, I suppose, what, make money? Is that
well,
what it
it goes
is?
back to I mean, that's the thing. It goes back to that book where I mean, he explains it there to where, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, the three biggest investors in the world, they all own, they control more than 50% of the S&P 500 companies. And pretty much if you look one up there, BlackRock, I believe, is the largest stakeholder or shareholder in Tyson, John Deere, all ADM, all these big ag companies, which really these corporations control the ag organizations, and that's why you're seeing this crap. I mean, NCBA has pretty much they have their sustainability page, which is really their ESG page, and it goes right along with all that crap from the United Nations. You can take word for word out of the United Nations, like 17, what do they call it? Sustainability development goals. I mean, and
Yep.
that's the thing. We now have a president who thinks, all these net zero goals and everything is a bunch of BS. And we have a cattle organization who's came out and spoke for every cattle producer out there. And they said, we're going to get to net zero, or they said carbon neutral by the year 2040. Like, how stupid do they look right now? And how much are they scrambling? I guess I haven't checked their website to see if they've taken that page down yet. But all of this stuff is coming out where people, Trump campaigned on this thing being a hoax. And Vivek and JD Vance and all those guys. And so now you have the leadership of the country that is against, you know, this this climate push, but you still have national. I mean, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association has been all in on this deal for a
All of
long time.
it. Yep.
And so now the tides are turning, and where are they going to go, and what are they going to try to say, and how are they going to try to cover up what they've done over the last few years? And Farm Bureau too. Farm Bureau, I mean, that's where you get into, like I said, John Deere, all these big corporations where this ESG has been pushed, and they're all for the sustainability. They were all for the $3 billion getting shoved out um, into corporate pocketbooks. And I saw an article this last week. ADM's having like financial trouble, I guess, but go back. ADM got $90 million, I think.
Hey, they just got $90 million, which you told us. But I mean, $90 million to ADM is nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, but I saw a really interesting, I think it was the granddaughter or maybe daughter of David Rockefeller in the airport just slamming Trump, And in my
How did you recognize her?
Well, it was on Twitter. Somebody tagged,
Oh,
and so in my presentation, The War on Beef, I've always brought up what David Rockefeller said. And yesterday I'm watching this COP29 deal at the United Nations, and the Rockefeller name comes up all the dang time. And remember David Rockefeller, he said, some even believe we are a part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I'm proud of it. And that was, 70 years ago that he said
yeah.
that. And so you have the Trump family and you have the Rockefeller family, and they all run in the same circles. But Trump has really made a 180-degree turn and said, hey, I believe in freedom. And so this is going to get really interesting. I really think it's going to be the Trump nation against the world, and we're going to have to fight her out.
Yeah, and that goes back to agriculture where we
Yep.
kind of stick. It's like it'll be really interesting where, is Farm Bureau just going to turn on their heel on this deal, or are they going to stick to their sustainability talk or
Well,
line?
I think they're going to have to strike a balance, because if they turn and go the direction Trump's going, they're going to look like stupid fools. I mean,
Yeah,
they
I know, and
look
that's the thing.
so
We got to
foolish.
keep we just got to remind people too. Like, I mean, I'm not against Farm Bureau. I guess I shouldn't. I don't know. It'll piss people off either way, but it's like I think we need a strong ag organization, as far as that includes all of agriculture. I think that's a good thing, but I think, the way they've operated needs a 180-degree turn.
Well,
Um,
I'm not against an ag organization at all, but I am against an ag organization using taxpayer funds and private funds, and which requires them to be influenced by policy. Right? All of this cannot be influenced by the dollar. That's where the difference is. I mean, you take. I'm sure Farm Bureau gets some of our checkoff money, don't
oh
they?
yeah, yeah, their
And
checkoff contract.
and so if you're getting and having public-private partnerships with NGOs, which we know, the NCBA has been infiltrated by these environmental non-governmental organizations, ENGOs, and they're giving them money. Well, they're not going to give them money to go against the grain.
Right.
You have to follow the rules. And so that's why I say we got to end the pay-to-play system. And if you're a part of one of those organizations that is getting that kind of money, I think you got to get yourself out of it and go independent. You just
Yeah, and
have
that's the
to.
thing. Like, we need farm organizations that represent farmers and ranchers and not
Right.
represent corporations. And that's what I was saying on the last one. I feel like the county farm bureaus, the state farm, even some of the state farm bureaus, they do represent their members, but where it really gets lost is on the national level. I
Right.
I knew a guy who said he was I don't remember what his really role was, but he tried to get the national policy book given to his county and state members, and they refuse to send him the
Wow.
national policy book because the national policy book it's not easy to find, and I've read through it, and it's straight out of World Economic Forum.
Yeah, the
I mean
Communist
it's
Manifesto.
DEI,
Yep.
it's ESG, it's all of that crap is in there. And the reason I read through it is to see what they said about mandate electronic ID tags, and it says in there, we support USDA's current plan to mandate electronic identification.
Well, and
Um,
remember what Tracy Hunt said in his presentation on the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, that you know the the three priorities of the GRSB come straight out of the communist constitution, Russia's communist
yeah.
constitution.
Yep. What else?
Let me look. There's lots to talk about.
How much time? I wish this thing would tell me how much time we've been
What
sitting
about this?
here. I just
What do you
lose
think?
myself in these conversations.
Well, what do you think? What are you thinking about this cattle vaccine for methane, where Jeff Bezos has pushed out $9.4 million in funding this project
Yeah,
to
I mean
give?
it goes back to what we were just talking about. And for one thing, I mean, people don't like it goes back to all this different stuff because, just like shooting your dog, people don't like to hear about you shooting your dog, but there are times when dogs need to be shot. But, so we're going to come up with new medicines. People don't like to hear about new medicines, especially after the last 4 years, and inject it into our food. Um, and for really based on a hoax. You know what I mean? I mean, there's my thought. It's stupid, and I don't think a consumer wants anything else injected into their food, especially how does it work? Do cattle, is it going to hurt the health of cattle? Because cattle's guts work different than their stomach works the way it does for a reason. They're outputting methane for a reason. So when to go back to what you're talking about, there's a vaccine that they're talking, or I don't know if you call it you don't call it a
Yeah,
vaccine. What the
it's
heck?
called the methane vaccine, brought to us by the Bezos Earth Fund, Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. And
Who,
there's
who yeah,
a guy in New Zealand talking about how wonderful it is that we'll be able to vaccinate, I guess, these cows, and they won't be burping and farting so much methane. But it's it's just so stupid, and why mess with it when it's based on absolute BS, which goes back to United Nations, which is where the BS came from. The whole thing, I've looked all the way through it. The whole thing is a scam based on a report created by the United Nations called Livestock's Long Shadow, where
yep.
it really took all sorts of faulty data and faulty research and came up with this idea that livestock are destroying the planet. And really, that goes back to the goal of the United Nations war on agriculture. Really, I mean, their goal is to destroy agriculture because agriculture is an independent industry still in the U.S., and it's still kind of ran by small farms and ranches, and that is their enemy. Any sort of independence that can't be controlled is their enemy. So this was their plan, kind of to take over that, and this stupid vaccine plays into it, and it goes back to, how much is this going to cost, and who's getting the money and all that kind of crap, just like every other thing.
Well, if you look at it, Jim, everything they do is to go against the natural way God made the world, right? So it's against all that is good. And the truth of it is, and Andrea Hutchinson has reminded me of this so often, is that it's not the carbon reduction they're worried about. It's you're the carbon that they want to reduce. And because I will say 100,000 times, to get control of the people, they have to have control of the land. And that's where this is going right there. They want to go. I mean, he said it this morning at COP 29. They want a one world order and a one world governance. That's their goal. And that's getting control of your food supply, no matter how it is. And I just, to me, how God made that bovine, the way the bovine works and that four stomach system, it's good for the land. It's all that
Yeah.
is good,
And that's what
right? It is
everyone,
all that is good.
yeah. And what's that going to do for pasture? Because everybody
Yeah,
talks about methane is plant food. So what's that do to your plants that your cattle have to eat
yeah.
to actually, I mean, you're getting into the playing God. It's like Bill Gates wants to block out the
There
sun.
you
Well,
go.
okay, maybe we
Yeah.
should think about that a little bit before it's just so stupid.
But if
And
you'll
it's
notice
based
at the
on,
end of it, on the back end of it, it's all anti-God. That's what it is. It's
yeah,
all anti-God, unbelievers, but
yeah. But
a
They,
whole
they
different.
think that they are, it's almost like, yeah, they
Yeah.
think they need to play God.
Can I change the subject?
Absolutely.
What do you think about Trump and Biden meeting at the White House? What do you think about that?
I mean, they have to do it, right? It's not like they can just,
Sometime,
huh?
sometime they have to do it. I mean, or do
Did
they have
they,
to do it?
I don't know, did Trump meet with Biden last time? That was a little more prickly of a situation, I guess. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you would think, and I don't know. People say Biden probably voted for him, so so
Well,
maybe he'll be like, "Thank God you're coming in here, not that." What do you think of Kamala Harris paying Beyonce $8 million to
what
just
the
talk at her
heck?
thing? Like, what
I
a
mean,
what a bullet we dodged there. Like when you look at that, she paid who was it? Somebody else. I think Eminem. She paid $1 million to interview her.
yeah, and
Like
Oprah's saying
what? And
that's
now they're $20 million in debt.
well,
Like,
and here's the thing that I don't give a shit if they are $500 million in debt, but Trump comes out and says, I think we should probably help them with their debt. And I'm like, no way.
yeah,
Not
that's
even kind of.
that is not who we voted for.
That is not what we voted for.
So
Let
that
him
she,
say
how
that.
about Beyonce helps them with their debt, or Eminem, or Oprah, or all
There
these
you
people?
go.
How about you give your money back if instead of
If you truly
instead
believe in
of
the
this?
cause,
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine? Well, for one, if you're a Harris, could you imagine donating to that campaign and then seeing your money go to Beyonce just so that I mean, she didn't even sing or nothing. But then also, could you imagine donating to the Trump campaign and he says he's going to help him out? Like, that's not what people donated to your campaign for either.
exactly. And I know a guy who gave him $250,000 and never even got a thank you for it.
Yeah, I know I had to beg for anything
God.
he could get, and it was more than 250. Um, But yeah, and that goes to show too the money in the, I guess, and that's nobody's really talking about, but we got to get that out of there, where these millionaires and billionaires can just throw money at these candidates and then hope to get a seat. I mean, maybe we've circled back, hope to get a cabinet spot.
A seat at the table.
Yeah,
What are you going to do when they call you? Are you going to take a job in the
I don't
cabinet?
take phone calls. My phone number's hidden. Um, no, I do. That nobody's calling me. I saw your name on a list though.
You did.
Um,
Okay, so did you hear about the 80,000 pounds of Costco butter that was recalled?
I heard something about it because it didn't say or what did it say? Didn't say milk on
It
it or
didn't
something?
have milk. Yeah, it didn't have milk on on the label, and so they recalled all this butter, and then they had to tell people how to destroy the butter.
How do you store destroy? How much? 80,000 pounds, you say? Is that what you said?
Yep,
How are
yep.
they going to destroy that?
Well, they can either return it or the Costco is going to help them
Oh, it's already
safely.
sold?
Yeah, safely
So
dispose of the butter. Here's a funny ex Spike Cohen. He says 80,000 pounds of Costco butter was just recalled because the label doesn't say it contains milk. It's butter. News articles are telling people how they can return it or safely dispose of the butter. And he goes, it's butter.
I know how to dispose of it. I love butter on pretty much everything.
We do too.
And if you don't have a butter dish on your counter with a nice soft piece of butter on it, that's what, here's the number one gripe for me is going to a restaurant and you ask for butter and they bring out you this frozen hard chunk and what
Little
the heck are you
gross.
supposed to
Yeah,
do with it? Butter doesn't spoil if you put it out on the counter in your butter dish.
that's right.
People who aren't have a butter dish aren't living. You're not living yet unless you have a butter dish on
Did
your
your mom
counter with soft butter in it.
did your mama and daddy make butter?
Oh no, we never milk. My dad milked cows when he was a kid, but we never made butter. Did you make butter? You'd growing up
I
with
did
on a party line, making churning butter out on
no.
the porch?
My mom made butter
Yeah.
when we were little kids. We had milk cows and all
Oh,
that
no
stuff.
kidding.
Oh yeah, but the milk cows went away about I don't know when I was probably 10. And but yes, she made butter and she taught me how to make butter. Um, and I always got mad because there's a lot of water in it. You know, you have to squeeze that water out and all that stuff.
I
But
don't have any
if I had,
idea.
oh yeah, if I had to make butter today, I could make it, but I just don't want to. So I buy it and I buy a lot of it at a time. Our little local grocery store will have a sale of a case of butter. Do you know how much a case of butter is? That's a lot of butter. And I'll buy it there, but we love it. And you're right. You know, Wynonna Judd sings a song called "Flies on the Butter," and
Well, you got to have a
that was so
cover on it.
yeah. But that was so true at our house. Is the
Yeah.
butter was always on the counter or the table, and we had this little butter dish. And I can remember my neighbor lady up until they left the ranch. I mean, just 10 or 15 years ago, they milked cows and she made butter I don't know, every week she made butter and she would always have this little form that she put the butter in and it made it all pretty. And then she'd carve their brand in it, you know,
Oh
and so
man.
yeah, it was pretty nostalgic really, but that's pretty cool. All you got to do is take heavy cream and put it in a like a jar, a glass jar and shake it and you'll get butter. It's easy.
Hmm.
So it's a good little science project for your kids.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're milking cows? You got any milk cows?
No, I'm not going to milk a cow.
Well, then how are you gonna get the cream?
You go buy it at the store.
Oh, you
You
just
just
take cream
buy,
off the shelf?
yeah, you just buy a deal of whole, it has to be whole cream, and you put it in your butter churn or however you want to make it. You can put it in a jar and shake it, or you can put it in your butter churn. Or you can put it even in an ice cream maker. And if you over churn it for ice cream, it'll go turn to butter.
Hmm. Shows what I
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
my mom talks about my grandpa had, I think she said 8 dairy cows that he would milk by hand every day, twice a
Yep.
day. And then they would sell the cream. They had a guy that would come around, I think, and buy it. And we still have, it's in
The
that
cream,
video I did.
the cream.
We have the calendars on that the dairy outfit would hand out, and they're still tacked up in our barn from the 50s when he
That's
did it.
awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, we still have my mom's cream cans and cream separator from when she was a kid, and I was just talking to her about it a couple days ago, and I was asking her. I said, "Well, how did you got up and do those chores?" And she said, "Yep, we got up and we did the chores. Two of us went out and milked, or maybe three of them went out and milked, and then they came back in and ate breakfast. Well, she said we milked, we cleaned the separator, and then we ate breakfast, and then we got on the bus to go to school. And she said it took forever to clean that separator, and they cleaned it out in the bunkhouse. The bunkhouse had no running water. They had a gas stove out there, so they had to haul the water to the bunkhouse, heat it up, clean the separator. And if you've ever seen a cream separator, there's 1,000 little cone pieces in there that have to be cleaned. And she said we got that done. And I said, all right, so what'd you do with the cream? And she said, well, we stored it in cream cans once a week, and once a week they'd go to town and sell that cream. And that's how they bought their school clothes. The kids did. And I said, well, did the cream not curdle, rot? And she's like, I have no idea. And but then her dad, my grandpa, told me, he said, Shad, that's how we literally ate during the Depression. Is we sold cream in town to buy the week's groceries, whatever we could afford, and we drank the curdled milk off the cream. That's how. And Jim, the day he died, he'd drink a glass of curdled milk. God dang.
He'd like set it out and let it go bad.
They'd never let their milk go or waste their milk. I mean, my grandpa would either drink it, or she'd make cornbread, or she'd make something with it. And I mean, we ate good, but yeah, those were the days, buddy.
Those people were tough. I can't even drink milk. Maybe
they were tough.
Drinking milk. I'm one of them people who just a few years ago it just started really hurting my stomach, and now they say if you raw milk, people who have this kind of issue like I have, raw milk is the way to go. So,
well, I think that's true. I think that's true. After I got off the tit, I never drank milk again. Not that I don't like it. I don't like to drink it. I cook a lot with it, but I don't drink it. Well,
that's probably the most interesting thing we talked about. I like that.
It really was. It really was. I got a lot of historic stories. Did I ever tell you about the time that during Prohibition, my great grandma's brother was just east of our house, a quarter of a mile. There is what they call 9 Mile Spring, and we live up on a mesa, and then that mesa falls off, and on the edge of that mesa is 9 Mile Spring. And my great grandmother's brother used that spring, and he made whiskey, moonshine at that spring, and had a still there. And of course, this was during Prohibition, and they figured out that he was moonshining, and they arrested him and put him in prison for 10 years. Well, that was in the 20s, right? So when the Dirty 30s came along, the whole country that the president had said, plow from fence line to fence line. Well, that whole country just blew away. Well, he had been hiding all of his whiskey bottles in the ground in certain places, and they said some of those fields would blow away, and it looked like it was growing whiskey bottles.
Jackpot. Yeah. Were they full?
Yeah, yeah.
Did they let him out of jail when Prohibition got repealed? Or he still had to? They did?
Nope. Yeah, they let him out of jail. And I mean, I remember him when I was a kid. He was a kind of a funny old guy, and he ended up being a millionaire. And I don't know, his name was Clark Belmer, and it was
kind of like John Lee Pettimore.
Well, the funny thing about that is how deeply tied. We don't own that ranch. It's right beside us, but we don't own that ranch where it was. And my best friend from growing up, he bought that ranch, I don't know, 10 years ago, and he was working down in, somebody had developed that spring over the years, and he got down in that spring and was working on it, and he died down in there. And it was a sad story.
From what?
Well, the spring sits up on the side of this main, and gravity flows all over his ranch. That water, that spring waters that whole ranch. Well, he was new to the ranch. He had just bought it, and he didn't know how that water system worked. Well, it got real hot in the summer of 17, in the summer of 17, and that spring kind of slowed down. Well, he wasn't getting water all across that ranch, and he thought that he had a plugged line. So he got down in there, and in our country, you can kind of put some air pressure on those lines and force, if there's something blocking a line, you can force that out. Well, I don't know why Matt wasn't thinking, but he got down in there and he used a pressurized propane tank to unblock that line. Well, it wasn't blocked Well, it may have been blocked. We don't know. But that propane came back up in his face and knocked him out.
Oh, and he fell in.
Fainted. Well, he was standing in the water and he fainted. And when he fainted, his mouth and his nose that much was in that much water and he drowned.
Doggone.
And they had just bought that ranch, and his wife is really struggling to try to keep it and make it work. She's doing a good job, but it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
She's a widow at 47 years old.
So this happened recently?
Yeah, it happened in, well, it's 04, and it was 6 years ago in August. So it happened in what, 18?
Dang. Hey, to go back to our music trivia, I said he sounds like John Lee Pettimore. You know who that is?
No, never
It's
heard of
like
him.
his daddy and his daddy before.
I've heard that.
Copperhead Road.
Copperhead Road.
It's all about making whiskey. I wish I could think of it. Now I can't think of it, but
I've
anyway.
tried I've tried to make beer before, never whiskey. I've made beer and wine. So my dad, when he was a kid, they had a one bedroom house, and it was a big old, it wasn't a big house, but it had really thick walls. It was adobe. And his dad had a beer recipe. I wish I had it to this day, but they didn't buy the beer, they made the beer. And my dad told me, he said that he was in bed one night when he was a little bitty kid, and that beer went to over fermenting and was popping those corks off underneath his bed. And he said, pretty quick, my bed was just felt like it was doing this. And after he, graduated and got out of the house, their house burnt down, and so went with the recipe. So,
Mm, big loss. Beer recipe.
big,
You could have been the heir to the Coors. Uh, you could have been the Southern Colorado Coors family. You're not living yet unless you have a butter dish.